The last thing I expected to find inside my own house was a secret life. My wife's secret life, sealed behind drywall like a buried crime. It was 3:15 on a quiet Tuesday afternoon when the contractor called my name, his voice trembling just enough to freeze me mid-step. "Elias," he said, his tone hushed, like he didn't want the house itself to hear. I turned from the kitchen window, coffee still warm in my hand. Paul's face was pale, his calloused fingers holding something as though it might burn him. "You're gonna want to see this," he said, holding out a scuffed, blackened phone he'd found stuffed behind the insulation in the wall. I frowned, confused. "What is it?" "A burner," Paul said. "And Elias, maybe get the kids out of here first." My grip on the coffee mug tightened. That suggestion wasn't casual, it was a warning. I set the cup down too hard. The sharp clink against the granite countertop echoed through the kitchen. Lydia had chosen that countertop last spring, argued for weeks about it, insisting I didn't understand her vision for the home. Now I was wondering what other visions she'd been working on without me. "Paul," I said carefully, my voice lower than I meant it to be. "What are you talking about?" Paul Martinez wasn't the kind of man to spook easily. He'd been renovating homes in Garrison, Maine for nearly 4 decades, and I'd trusted him with every big job at Grayson Lumber and Supply. He'd known me since I was 16. Hell, he'd seen me grow up. But right now, Paul looked like he'd just dug up a body. His face was gray, drywall dust clinging to his boots, his hands shaking as he extended the phone toward me. "Trust me, Elias," he said. "Emma and Jack shouldn't be here for this. Maybe call your sister, take them somewhere. I'm serious." Emma was 13, Jack was 10. They were upstairs right now, probably fighting over who got the PlayStation controller first. Normal kid stuff, normal life stuff, and Paul was telling me that normal was about to end. "You're scaring me, Paul. What's on the phone?" He handed it to me like a priest passing over a holy relic or a live grenade. The screen was cracked, but it lit up. My thumb hesitated over the power button. I knew whatever I saw next might change everything. When I finally unlocked it, the first thing I saw was a message thread, an ongoing conversation that made my stomach turn to ice. "Colin, can't wait to see you tonight. Same place, Lydia." "Yes, Elias is working late again. He never pays attention anyway." "Colin, good. Bring those photos we talked about. Time to make our move." I kept scrolling. There were months of messages, months of planning, months of my wife speaking about me like I wasn't her husband, like I was a problem, an obstacle to get around. "Jesus," I whispered under my breath. "There's more," Paul said quietly. He reached into his tool bag and pulled out a manila envelope, sealed with fresh tape. "Found this hidden with the phone. Inside were Polaroids, our house from every angle, our backyard, our kids getting on the school bus, and then, worse, copies of my financial records, bank statements, insurance documents, business contracts for my supply yard." It felt like my blood was draining out of me. "Paul," my voice cracked, "how long do you think this stuff has been there?" He ran a hand through his hair. "Tape's not old. 6 months maybe. But Elias, people only hide things in walls when they're planning something big, something they can't risk leaving in the open." That's when I heard it. The sound that used to make me smile. The front door opening. Lydia's heels clicking across the hardwood. But now, that rhythm sounded like a countdown timer. "Elias," she called, her voice edged with irritation, the way it had been so often lately. "Whose truck is in the driveway?" Paul looked at me, his jaw tight. "You need to decide right now what you're gonna do." I shoved the phone and photos back into the envelope so fast I nearly ripped it. "Hide this," I said, thrusting it toward Paul. "Somewhere she won't find it. Please, Elias." He started, but it was too late. Her footsteps were already in the hallway. Lydia appeared in the doorway, like nothing was wrong, like she wasn't the storm tearing my life apart. She still wore her HR manager's uniform, crisp black pantsuit, white blouse, her hair pulled back in that perfect knot. On the outside she was flawless, but I noticed things now. Little cracks in the mask I'd been too blind to see. The way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. The way her hand hovered near her phone like a smoker reaching for a lighter. The faint scent of that new perfume, the one she swore she bought on sale, but that smelled like a department store counter we'd never set foot in together. "Oh, It's Paul. Her tone dropped a few degrees, as if she'd just walked in on a crime scene. I thought we agreed no more work this week. We have the Henderson dinner party Friday, and this mess, just finishing up the kitchen wall, Paul said, keeping his voice calm, neutral, like a man who'd seen 100 marital arguments play out in houses like this. I'll be done soon. Good, Lydia said, scanning the room with a critical eye, because I need this place spotless by Friday. The Hendersons are particular. I stared at her, memorizing every movement, every word, the way you memorize the face of a stranger who might pull a gun. Elias, she said, her voice sharp, now, we still need to talk about the budget for this renovation. 15 years. 15 years of breakfast together. 15 years of whispered, I love yous. 15 years of building this house, this life, and she'd been tearing it down behind my back. Sure, I said, let's talk. Paul was packing his tools faster than I'd ever seen him move. Before he left, he met my eyes. I'll be back tomorrow, he said carefully. Don't forget what we discussed. The unspoken part of that sentence hung heavy between us. After he left, Lydia opened the fridge, took out the bottle of Pinot she kept for special occasions, and poured a glass. It wasn't even 4 p.m. That man makes me nervous, she said, sipping like she needed it. Always poking around, asking questions. He's been renovating houses since before we met, I said evenly. Paul knows what he's doing. I'm not questioning his work, she said, her tone sharpening. I'm questioning his discretion. Some things should stay private, Elias. Family business should stay family business. The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a chisel. You're right, I said, my voice calm but heavy. Privacy is important in a marriage. Her head snapped toward me. Her glass paused halfway to her lips. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said, just agreeing with you. I leaned against the counter, studying her like she was a puzzle I was just starting to solve. Speaking of privacy, I said casually, I've been thinking we should update the security system, maybe add some cameras. Her reaction was instant, too instant. The glass froze mid-air. Cameras, she asked. Why? Break-ins have been happening around here, I said, letting the lie slip off my tongue like I'd rehearsed it. Mrs. Patterson had her shed broken into last month. I just want to protect our family. She set the glass down hard enough that wine sloshed over the rim. This is overkill, she snapped. We live in a safe area. Safe is relative, I said, my voice suddenly sharp. You never know who might be watching, learning our routines. Her face flickered, just for a second, and then she smoothed it over. Elias, she said slowly, you're being paranoid. Am I said, or am I just finally paying attention? We stared at each other across that kitchen, the kitchen we'd renovated together, and for the first time in my life, I realized I had no idea who this woman really was. A beautiful stranger, a dangerous stranger. I'm going to pick up the kids, I said finally. They can walk home, she said flatly. Not today. I grabbed my keys. I want to spend time with them. Is that a problem? She turned away, started wiping down spotless counters just to have something to do with her hands. Do whatever you want, she muttered. You always do anyway. Her phone buzzed once, then again. I didn't wait to see who was texting her. In the truck, I called my sister. Becca, I said, can Emma and Jack stay with you tonight? Maybe tomorrow too. Of course, she said, her voice concerned. Elias, is everything okay? I looked at the house in the rearview mirror. Lydia stood in the kitchen window, phone pressed to her ear, talking fast, gesturing like she was putting out a fire. I'll explain later, I said. Just keep them safe. You're scaring me, Becca said quietly. Good, I said. Someone should be scared. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Instead, I sat alone in my workshop, the manila envelope spread out on my desk like evidence at a crime scene. Paul had come back after Lydia went to bed, dropping off something else he'd found, a small digital camera, hidden in the vent above the kitchen table. Somebody's been watching you, he said gravely. The question is, who? By 2 a.m., I had my answer. The memory card was filled with photos, dozens of them, me leaving for work, coming home, loading supplies at the yard, all taken from angles no stranger should have access to.
My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. Stop digging, or you'll find more than you bargained for. I took a screenshot, then typed back, "Me, who is this?" No reply. I pulled up our cell phone account, something I'd never done, because Lydia handled all the bills, and there it was, 3 extra lines on our family plan, 3 phones I'd never heard of. One of them matched the unknown texter, another belonged to Colin Baird. Colin, the slick real estate broker with the silver BMW, the Rolex collection, the perfect hair, the man who collected expensive toys, houses, cars, and apparently other men's wives. The third number was a mystery. At dawn, I drove to Dewey's Diner. Dewey had been running the place for over 20 years. She knew everyone's secrets. "Elias Grayson," she said, with a grin as I walked in. "Haven't seen you in ages. Where's that pretty wife of yours?" "Working early," I said, sliding onto a stool at the counter. "You know how it is." But my heart was pounding, because I wasn't here for breakfast. I was here for answers.
"Speaking of work," Dewey said as she topped off my coffee, "that Colin Baird's been busy lately. Seen him around town at all hours. Real estate must be booming." I forced a shrug, kept my voice light. "Yeah, he's always been ambitious." "Ambitious?" Dewey let out a short, sharp laugh. "That's one word for it. Man's got wandering eyes, if you ask me." The words landed like a hammer. She leaned a hip against the counter, lowering her voice as if the walls might be listening. "He was in here just last week, with a married woman. Definitely not his wife. I can tell you that much." My coffee suddenly tasted bitter, like acid. "Really?" I said carefully, though my pulse was pounding in my ears. Pretty thing too. Polished. Professional looking. You know the type." She refilled my cup, kept talking like she was discussing the weather. They were real cozy, talking low, holding hands under the table like teenagers sneaking around. "I don't judge, but," she glanced at me, softened her tone, "I always feel bad for the spouse who doesn't know what's going on." "What did she look like?" I asked, my voice tighter than I wanted. Dewey thought for a moment, then leaned closer. Dark hair, designer clothes. Drove a white Lexus SUV. Smelled like she'd just walked out of one of those fancy perfume counters. Roses and money. Lydia's perfume. Lydia's car. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as sawdust. "Thanks, Dewey." I left a 20 under the coffee cup and walked out, my mind buzzing so loud it was hard to think. By the time I reached Grayson Supply, my chest was tight with fury. Ray Morrison was already there, unloading a shipment of lumber like it weighed nothing. 8 years my right-hand man, ex-military, built like a tank, loyal in the way only someone who'd been through hell could be. "Boss," he said, glancing at my face, "you look like hell." "Feel like it," I muttered. "What's eating you?" I told him everything. The burner phone, the photos hidden in the wall, the camera in the vent, Colin Baird, the text message warning me to stop digging. Ray didn't interrupt. He just kept working, his big hands steady, his expression getting darker and darker as I laid out every piece. When I was done, he let out a low whistle. "Son of a, how long you think this has been going on?" he asked, finally. "Based on the messages, 6 months, maybe longer." "And you're sure it's Baird?" I showed him the phone records, the messages, the screenshots. Ray studied them like they were intel reports, the same way he once studied enemy positions overseas. Slow, careful, deadly serious. "This isn't just an affair," he said at last, his voice grim. "This is worse." "Worse how?" "Look at what they took," he said, tapping the financial documents. "Bank statements, insurance policies, business contracts. This isn't just about sneaking around behind your back." The implications hit me like a sledgehammer. "You think they're planning to rob me? Or worse," Ray said flatly. "Think about it. You have a successful business, big house, life insurance. If something were to happen to you," he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. "Lydia would get everything," I said quietly, "and she'd be free to marry him." We stood there in silence for a moment, surrounded by stacks of lumber and bags of concrete mix, tools meant to build things that would last, while my marriage had been rotting like termite-eaten wood. Ray finally broke the silence. "What do you want to do?" I looked him dead in the eye. I want to know exactly what they're planning, I said, and then I want to stop them. Ray grinned, the kind of grin that told me he was already in. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I didn't feel alone. I had an ally. What do you need? He asked. Help me install real security cameras around the house, I said. Hidden ones, the kind they'll never find. And then I hesitated, the thought heavy in my mind. And then I want to know every move they make, where they go, who they talk to, what they're saying when I'm not in the room. Ray's grin widened. Now you're thinking like a soldier. Everything about Colin Baird. I told Ray. His business, his finances, his weaknesses. I want it all. Ray gave a short nod, already mentally assembling a plan. I can do that. What about Lydia? I stared past him, jaw tight. I'm going to give her enough rope to hang herself. That night, I came home earlier than usual. The house smelled of garlic and basil, warm, inviting, like a picture of normalcy. Lydia was at the stove, her back to me, wearing a new dress I'd never seen. Her hair was pinned up, a few loose strands framing her face. She looked like she was getting ready for a date, not cooking for her husband. You're home early, she said, not turning around. Thought I'd surprise you. She smiled faintly over her shoulder. Smells good in here. Just spaghetti, nothing fancy. I stood in the doorway, watching her move. Every time her phone buzzed, her hand twitched like she couldn't help it. She'd check the screen, then keep cooking, a little too quickly, a little too nervously. The kids are staying at Rebecca's again tonight, I said casually. Oh, she didn't look up. Yeah, thought we could use some alone time. That made her stop, just for a second, long enough for me to catch it, that flicker of fear, or maybe guilt, in her eyes. That sounds nice, she said, her voice tight as piano wire. At dinner I played my part, the good husband, the clueless one. I asked about her day, told her a funny story Ray had told me at the yard, complimented the sauce, even though I barely tasted it. All the while I watched her keep glancing at that phone like it was a lifeline, watched how she couldn't sit still, couldn't look me in the eye for more than a few seconds. You seem distracted, I said finally. Just tired. Work's been stressful. Anything I can help with? No, it's just office politics. You wouldn't understand. Try me, I said gently. I deal with people all day too. She set her fork down, folded her hands and gave me that patient, rehearsed look she used when explaining things to our kids. It's different, Elias. Your customers buy supplies and leave. I have to manage personalities, handle sensitive situations, confidential matters. Must be hard, I said softly, keeping secrets. Her phone buzzed. She grabbed it so fast it almost fell off the table, read the message, typed a reply. Important, I asked. Work emergency. Some emergencies don't wait for business hours. At 8 p.m., I kept my voice mild, but my heart was hammering. I twirled more spaghetti onto my fork, pretended to think. You know, I was thinking we should take a vacation, just the two of us. Get away from all this stress. I can't take time off right now. When's the last time we went anywhere together? She hesitated. Last summer. We went to my mother's house last summer, I reminded her. I meant somewhere for us, alone. Her thumbs were already moving over the phone screen again. Maybe next year or maybe this weekend. Bar Harbor. That bed and breakfast you liked so much. Elias, I said. I can't. Why not? Because I have commitments. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. What kind of commitments? She finally looked up from the phone, irritation flashing across her face. Why are you interrogating me? I'm not interrogating you, I said evenly. I'm trying to plan a romantic getaway with my wife. Well, your timing is terrible. When would be better? I don't know. Later. How much later? God, Elias, she snapped, slamming her phone down on the table hard enough to rattle the plates. What is this? 20 questions. I leaned back, calm on the outside but burning inside. I studied her flushed face, the way her hands trembled slightly, as she snatched the phone back up. Just asking, I said quietly. And in that moment, watching her, I knew something with absolute clarity. Whatever game Lydia was playing, it wasn't just about an affair anymore. She was lying to me about something bigger, and I was done playing nice. Trying to understand my wife's schedule, is that a crime? I asked. keeping my voice calm. You're being weird, Lydia shot back, arms crossed. Weird? I tilted my head. How? Pushy, suspicious, like you don't trust me. The irony was so sharp I almost laughed. Should I? I asked quietly. Her eyes narrowed. What kind of question is that? An honest one. We stared at each other across the dinner table. 15 years of shared meals, shared vacations, shared lies, stretched out between us like a minefield. Her phone buzzed. She didn't move. For the first time all night she ignored it. I think I'll go to bed early, she said finally, standing up and smoothing her dress. Big day tomorrow? Meetings. Reports. The usual. Will you be home for dinner? Probably not. Don't wait up. She left me alone at the table, the faint smell of her perfume still hanging in the air. After she went upstairs, I checked the new security cameras Ray and I had installed, hidden in the eaves, nearly invisible, feeding live footage straight to my phone. Night vision, motion detection, no blind spots. At 11:47 p.m., the motion alert pinged. On my screen, I watched Lydia slip out the back door, moving like a teenager sneaking out past curfew. She got into her Lexus and pulled away without headlights for the first block. I grabbed my keys and followed. She drove out of town, took Route 8, and pulled into the Pine View Motel, the kind of place with peeling paint and buzzing neon, the kind of place that didn't ask questions and didn't keep records. Colin's silver BMW was already there, parked behind the building where no one driving past would notice it. I parked across the road, killed my engine, and lifted the binoculars. At exactly 12:06 a.m., I saw my wife knock on the door of room 12. Colin opened it, shirt untucked, no tie. He smiled, reached for her wrist, and pulled her inside. The door closed. For 20 minutes, I sat there gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands went numb. Part of me wanted to storm over, kick in that cheap motel door, drag them both into the parking lot, and let the whole world see what they were doing. Another part of me wanted to drive home, crawl into bed, and pretend none of this was happening. But the part of me that had built a business from nothing, the rational, calculating part, knew that evidence was worth more than rage. I took photos. Lots of them. Lydia's Lexus, Colin's BMW, the room number, the timestamp glowing on my dashboard clock. Then I went home and waited. At 2:33 a.m., she returned, parking in the garage like a thief, slipping inside on silent feet. When she slid into bed next to me, her hair smelled like expensive cologne that wasn't mine. I kept my breathing steady and pretended to be asleep. The next morning, she was cheerful, too cheerful, getting ready for work with unusual care. Sleep well? I asked when she came downstairs. Like a baby, she said, smiling a little too brightly. Big day? Yeah, that project I told you about. Sensitive situation, I said, nodding slowly. Exactly. She poured her coffee into a travel mug, kissed me on the cheek, and was gone before I could say anything else. After she left, I called Ray. I need you to do something for me, I said. Name it. Colin Baird's BMW, silver, main plates. I've got the number from my photos. I want it decorated. Ray chuckled darkly. What kind of decorating? The kind that makes a statement. Copy that. Anything else? Yeah. Find out everything about him. Where he lives, who he does business with, what skeletons he's hiding in his closet. If he has enemies, I want to meet them. Ray's tone sharpened. On it, boss. That afternoon, I drove to Baird Real Estate, a converted Victorian with fresh white columns, polished brass plaques, and flower boxes meant to say trust us with your future. I walked in like a man with money to spend, like a man expanding his empire. The receptionist beamed. Good afternoon. Are you here to see someone? Yes, I said smoothly. I'm looking for commercial property, big space, new warehouse, maybe retail frontage. Within minutes, Colin appeared, all smiles, perfect handshake, the kind of charisma that sold dreams for a living. Grayson, he said warmly, great to see you again. Heard you're expanding. That's right, I said, forcing a smile. Business is booming. Perfect. I've got several properties that might interest you. For the next hour, he showed me listings, market forecasts, and photos of buildings that could have been my future. He was good, polished, persuasive, but the whole time, I couldn't stop thinking about how his shirt had looked when he opened that motel door, how my wife had looked when she stepped past him into the room, and how I was going to make both of them regret underestimating me. This warehouse on Industrial Drive might be perfect, he was saying, sliding a glossy sheet across the desk toward me. I took it, nodded thoughtfully, already planning my next move. The photos were everywhere by noon. Colin's BMW plastered with paint, every word sharp and damning, going viral faster than a brush fire in August. His receptionist was outside, snapping photos, trying to shield the car with her body, like she could somehow protect his reputation. It didn't work. Within minutes, a small crowd had gathered, people pointing, laughing, whispering behind their hands. In a town the size of Garrison, news didn't just travel fast, it sprinted. My phone buzzed. Lydia. Elias, where are you? Her voice was sharp, panicked. At the supply store, I said evenly. Why? Someone vandalized Colin Baird's car. It's all over social media. That's so, I said, keeping my tone flat. Terrible thing. Do you know who would do something like this? Not a clue, I said, though my lips curled into the faintest smile. Well, people are saying. She hesitated, then dropped her voice. They're saying Colin's been having an affair with a married woman. Really? I said. Do they know who? Not yet, but you know how people talk in this town. Oh, I do, I said softly. Secrets have a way of finding their way into daylight. She was quiet for a long beat. Elias, you sound strange. Are you okay? Never better. How's work? Fine. Normal. I have to stay late again tonight. Another sensitive situation. Yes, I said, almost laughing at the word. Well, be careful. Sounds like there's plenty of drama going around. After I hung up, I drove to Dottie's Diner, the unofficial nerve center of Garrison gossip. The place was electric. Every booth was filled, voices buzzing like hornets. Dottie was behind the counter, refilling mugs, her eyes shining with the thrill of fresh scandal. Well, if it isn't Elias Grayson, she said, as I slid onto a stool. You heard the news. Hard to miss, I said. Any theories on who did it? Oh, honey, she said, shaking her head. Colin Baird has made enemies all over town. Could be anyone. Angry clients, angry partners, angry husbands. Especially angry husbands. Man's been playing with fire for years. Sounds like he finally got burned. Dottie grinned. I ordered coffee and a slice of pie, listening to the wildfire of speculation around me, names being thrown out, marriages dissected like autopsies, affairs analyzed in forensic detail. Every story was worse than the last. My phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Unknown. This is just the beginning. Back off now, or things get worse. I turned the screen so Dottie could see. Any idea who'd send something like this? I asked. She squinted at the message, then shrugged. Honey, that sounds like somebody who's scared, and scared people. Yeah, scared people do stupid things, things they can't take back. That night, Lydia dressed up again, a little too carefully for someone who claimed to be working late. You sure you'll be okay here alone? She asked, checking her phone every 30 seconds. I'll manage, I said. Ray's coming by later. We've got paperwork to finish. Oh, she nodded, almost relieved. Well, don't wait up. This could take all night. Ray showed up an hour later with a 6-pack of beer and a manila folder stuffed with papers. Your boy's in trouble, he said, dropping the file on my kitchen table. I spread the documents out and felt my anger crystallize into something sharp and clean. His business is leveraged to the hilt, Ray said, pointing to numbers that told the story better than words ever could. Behind on his mortgage, gambling debts out of Boston. How much? North of 200 grand, and some of that money belongs to people who don't accept late payments. I leaned back, staring at the numbers. So he's desperate. Ray nodded, which explains why he's sniffing around Lydia. He's not just looking for fun, he's looking for a way out. I flipped through page after page,
tax liens, overdue invoices, foreclosure notices. Colin Baird's entire life was built on smoke and credit. And Lydia, she wasn't just his mistress, she was his retirement plan. Ray wasn't done. I talked to some guys in Boston. Colin's got a pattern, a history, of targeting married women. The richer the better. How many? At least 3 I could verify. All ended up divorced, broke, humiliated. He even testified against one of them in court, claimed she tried to bribe him to keep quiet. I stared at the papers, my jaw tight. Colin wasn't just a homewrecker, he was a predator, and now he'd set his sights on my family. I closed the folder and pushed it away. Ray, I said, my voice low, calm, deadly. Yeah? It's time to stop gathering information. Ray's grin was slow, feral. You want me to start making moves? Yes, I said, and this time, we make them count.
Colin Baird wasn't just a cheating playboy. He was a professional marriage wrecker, a man who made his living blowing up families and walking away with whatever he could carry. And right now, my wife was his next payday. Ray sat back in his chair, watching me carefully. So, he said, what do you want to do about it? I opened a beer, took a long, slow sip, and stared out the window. The night was black as pitch, quiet, except for the sound of crickets. What do I want to do? I said finally. I want to give them exactly what they've been planning to give me. Ray waited, which is, I turned back to him. My voice calm, steady, almost casual, complete and total destruction. The next morning I found Lydia in the kitchen, furiously scrubbing at a coffee stain on her white blouse like she was trying to erase a crime scene. Rough morning? I asked lightly. She didn't look at me. I spilled coffee in the car. This blouse is ruined. That's a shame, I said, taking a seat at the table. It's a pretty one. She froze mid-scrub, finally glancing up at me. Since when do you notice what I wear? I gave her a small smile. I notice plenty of things. Like how you've been working late every single night this week. I told you, we have a big project, she said, her tone defensive. What kind of project? Personnel issues. Very sensitive. Must be, I said, my eyes on her hands, still scrubbing. You've been getting texts at all hours. Can't be easy. Her hands stilled completely. What texts? The ones that wake you up at night, I said. The ones you answer in the bathroom with the door locked. She turned, her eyes sharp. Elias, what exactly are you implying? I'm not implying, I said softly. I'm observing. My wife is stressed, distracted, secretive. And as her husband, I'm concerned. There's nothing to be concerned about. Good, I said, standing. Then you won't mind if I take you to lunch today. That new place on Main Street. I can't. I'm busy. Dinner then. Or maybe this weekend. Elias, stop, she snapped, throwing the ruined blouse into the sink. The splash of water hit the counter, the floor. I have commitments. What commitments? Work commitments. Social commitments. Things you wouldn't understand. Try me, I said, stepping closer. She grabbed her purse and keys like a lifeline. Why are you being like this? Like what? Clingy, demanding. It's not attractive. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Trying to spend time with my wife isn't attractive. Not when you act like a jealous teenager. I tilted my head. Am I being jealous or just observant? For a second, we just stared at each other. 2 strangers sharing the same kitchen. Then she turned toward the door. I'm late for work, she said. Lydia, she stopped, didn't turn around. I love you, I said quietly. Whatever's going on, we can work through it. For a moment her shoulders sagged, just slightly. I thought, foolishly, that she might turn around, might tell me the truth, might give us a chance to save what we'd built. Instead, she straightened, lifted her chin, and walked out without another word. As soon as I heard her car pull away, I picked up the phone and called David Chen. He'd been my friend since high school, the guy who helped me incorporate my business back when I was just another broke dreamer with a pickup truck. Elias, he said. How's the construction empire? Booming, I said. Listen, David, I need some advice. Hypothetically speaking. Hypothetically. Yes, hypothetically. If someone wanted to protect their assets during a divorce, what would be the best approach? David's tone changed immediately, sharper, more professional. That depends, he said. Are we talking friendly divorce or contested? Contested, I said. With infidelity involved. Ah, he said, knowingly. Well, hypothetically, the spouse who can prove infidelity usually has an advantage, especially if there's evidence of financial misconduct. What kind of misconduct? Hidden accounts, unauthorized spending, any attempt to conceal assets or defraud the other spouse. Judges hate that. What about evidence? Photos, texts, witness testimony, bank records. The more documentation, the better. If one spouse is planning to leave for someone else and the other spouse can prove it, and prove they were being taken advantage of financially, they could lose everything. Everything, everything. Good to know, I said, and hung up. Then I called Ray. Got another job for you, I said. Name it. I want to know everywhere Colin Baird goes, everyone he talks to, every deal he tries to make. And I want the same on Lydia. You want me to follow them? Yes. Document everything. Photos, timestamps, whatever it takes. This is for legal purposes. Ray chuckled. You got it. Anything else? Yeah, I said, my voice low and calm. I want to set a trap. Ray's tone sharpened. For who? For both of them. I want to set up a meeting, I said. Ray raised an eyebrow. What kind of meeting? The kind where people stop pretending and show you who they really are. That afternoon, I drove to a strip mall 2 towns over and bought a burner phone. On the way home, I parked on the side of the road, composed a text, and sent it to Lydia's number. Me unknown. This is a friend. Your husband knows about Colin. Get out now before it's too late. Then I drove home like nothing had happened. Lydia came through the door less than an hour later. She didn't even take her shoes off, just started pacing the kitchen like a cornered animal. Everything okay? I asked from the table, flipping a magazine open. Fine, she said too quickly. Just tired. You seem agitated. I'm not agitated. Your hands are shaking. She shoved them into her pockets. I'm cold. It's 70 degrees in here, I said mildly. Elias, please, I just want to relax. Of course, I said, giving her a warm smile before going back to my magazine. But I wasn't reading. I was watching. And I saw her check her phone over and over, type messages, erase them, type new ones, hesitate, then finally send. At 10 p.m., she announced she was going to bed. I waited. At 11:23 p.m., my phone buzzed, the motion sensor on the security camera. Lydia, slipping out the front door. This time, I was ready. Ray's truck was parked 2 houses down, engine idling. We followed her through the quiet streets, headlights off, until she hit the highway. She drove fast, too fast, like someone running from a fire no one else could see. Finally, she turned into a flickering neon-lit diner on the edge of town, and there he was, Colin Baird, sitting in a back booth, nursing a coffee, looking like a man waiting for a verdict. Ray and I parked across the street, cameras ready. Through the telephoto lens, I watched Lydia slide into the booth. The conversation was tense from the start. Lydia gestured with both hands, frantic, like she was begging him to fix something. Colin kept glancing at the door, at the window, over his shoulder. A man who knew the walls were closing in. After 20 minutes, they left, separately. Lydia headed home. Colin drove to his apartment complex. Ray glanced at me as we tailed him. So what's the play here? I'm going to have a conversation with him. Ray frowned. What kind of conversation? The kind where I make it very clear what happens if he doesn't back off. Elias, he said, his voice low, this guy's desperate. Desperate people do stupid things. I smiled, cold and humorless. I'm counting on it. We parked at the far end of Colin's lot. I got out, crossed the pavement slow, deliberate, like a man with all the time in the world. When I knocked, it took him a long time to answer. Finally, the door cracked open. He stood there in a bathrobe, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his face drained of color the second he saw me. Elias, he said, voice unsteady, what are you doing here? I stepped closer, forcing him back into his own apartment. Relax, I said softly, closing the door behind me. We just need to have a little talk. Colin's face had gone pale, but he still stood there, glass trembling in his hand. What are you doing here? He asked, voice tight. We need to talk. It's late, then we'll make it quick. He hesitated, then stepped aside. Fine, come in. The place was expensive, but hollow. Sleek leather furniture, soulless abstract art. The kind of apartment that screamed, I want you to think I'm successful. Drink? He offered, holding up the whiskey bottle. No thanks, I said, lowering myself into the biggest leather chair in the room, as though I owned the place. This won't take long. He stayed standing, as if sitting might be some sort of admission of guilt. What's on your mind? My wife. His Adam's apple bobbed. Your wife, Lydia. Pretty brunette, white Lexus. Taste like lies and betrayal. The whiskey glass stopped halfway to his lips. I don't know what you think you, save it, I said. You've been whispering to her for months. Planning this, documenting every step, counting my money before you've stolen it. Colin's mask slipped. Elias, I think there's been the only misunderstanding, I cut him off, was thinking I wouldn't notice. I pulled out my phone, dropped it on his coffee table. Photos, motel receipts, screenshots of texts, PDFs of financial records that tied them together like a noose. Jesus, he whispered. He's not going to help you, I said. Neither is Lydia. Look, Colin said, taking a step closer, hands open. This isn't what it looks like. Oh, it looks exactly like what it is, I said, standing now, my voice low and sharp. You seduced my wife. You convinced her to siphon my money, and once you'd gutted everything I built, you were going to vanish and leave me bleeding. Colin sank down onto the couch, like a man with the air knocked out of him. It's complicated. No, it's simple. You're a predator. She's just your latest mark. The only thing left to decide is what happens next. His voice cracked. What do you want? I want you gone. Tonight. No goodbye, no parting words. Gone. I can't just leave. I have a business. Your business is bankrupt, I snapped. Your clients are about to learn where their money really went. Your creditors in Boston are going to hear exactly how deep you are in. If you're still here in 24 hours, I start dialing numbers. Colin's composure cracked completely. Sweat beaded his forehead despite the air conditioning. What about Lydia? He said finally. She's my problem, I said, not yours. She thinks she loves me. No, I said coldly. She thinks she loves your money. Shame for her, you don't have any. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. She won't forgive you for this, Colin said, his voice a mix of warning and plea. I looked back at him, my face like stone. I'm not looking for forgiveness. I'm looking for justice. What's the difference? He asked. Forgiveness is something you beg for, I said. Justice is something you take. And then I walked out, leaving him to sit with that. The next morning, Lydia was gone before I woke. She'd left a note on the counter, gone to my mother's for a few days. Need space to think. I called her mother's house. She wasn't there. I checked our joint bank account. $15,000. Gone. That's when I called David Chen. I need to file for divorce, I said. Today. Elias, he said carefully. Are you sure? Sometimes things can still, I'm sure. How quickly can we move? With evidence of infidelity and financial misconduct, he said. Very quickly. What do we have? I spent the next hour walking him through everything. Photos, texts, hidden phone, secret withdrawals. This is solid, David said finally. With this you'll keep the house, the business, probably get primary custody of the kids. What about spousal support? Given the circumstances, she'll be lucky to get visitation rights. When I hung up, I called Rebecca to check on the kids. They're fine, she said. But there was a pause. They're asking questions. When are you going to tell them? Soon, I said, when everything's ready. Elias, you sound different. Different how? Harder, colder. Maybe that's who I should have been all along. That afternoon, Paul Martinez came by to finish the kitchen renovation. He found me sitting at the table, staring at divorce papers. Rough day? He asked. Getting better, I said. Good, because I found something else in that wall. He handed me a small notebook, not a work log, a plan, for my murder. In Lydia's handwriting, Colin's plan. 3 months of details, an accident at the construction site, life insurance payout, sell the business, vanish together. Jesus Christ, I whispered. There's more, Paul said, handing me a manila envelope. Bank statements, fake wills, insurance policies. It wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just a theft. It was an execution order. I told Paul to take it to the police. Already did, he said. Detective Morrison's on her way. 20 minutes later, Detective Sarah Morrison sat at my kitchen table, flipping through the evidence, with the quiet precision of someone who'd seen the worst of humanity before. "This is serious, Elias," she said. "We're talking conspiracy to commit murder. Can you arrest them?" "We can try, but first we have to find them." "Find them? Your wife's car was found abandoned at the Portland airport this morning. No sign of her, or Colin." My blood ran cold. "They ran. Looks like it. But don't worry, we'll find them. People like this always make mistakes." After she left, I sat in silence. 15 years of love, trust, children, turned into evidence bags and police reports. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. "Elias," Lydia's voice. Small, fragile. "Where are you?" I asked. "It doesn't matter. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." "Sorry for what? The affair? The theft? Or the part where you planned to kill me?" Silence. "The police found your notebook," I said. "They know everything." "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she whispered. "How was it supposed to happen?" "I was supposed to trust you. To die for you? It wasn't my idea. Colin said it was the only way." "The only way to what?" "To be free. To be happy." "So you decided to make our children orphans?" "I never wanted to hurt them." "But you were willing to erase me from their lives." More silence. "Where's Colin?" "Gone," she said. "He left me at the airport. Took all the money. Said I was on my own." Despite everything, a tiny flicker of pity surfaced, quickly extinguished. "Lydia, you need to turn yourself in. I can't go to prison." "You should have thought about that before you signed my death warrant." I was desperate. The marriage was dead. I felt trapped. Colin promised you my life insurance money." "It wasn't about the money. It was all about the money. You picked a man who's bankrupted 3 women, owes money to criminals, and makes a living tearing families apart, and you burned your entire life down for him." "I thought he loved me," she said, voice breaking. "He loved your access to me." "Elias, please, can't we work this out?" "Work what out?" I said, my voice like a blade. "You tried to have me killed." The notebook was in her handwriting. The bank withdrawals had her signature. The text messages painted a chilling timeline of intent, not a fleeting moment of weakness, but a deliberate, calculated conspiracy. The courtroom was silent, as the prosecutor held up each piece of evidence, one by one, like weapons in an invisible war. The jurors didn't look at Lydia with pity. They looked at her like someone who had crossed a line from which there was no return. I sat there, hands clasped, staring at the woman I had once promised to love until death did us part, realizing she had tried to make that promise literal. Lydia wouldn't look at me. Not once. Her hair was tied back, her face pale and drawn. She looked smaller, weaker, but I refused to let myself feel sympathy. Sympathy was what had blinded me for too long. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, Lydia finally looked my way. Her expression was unreadable, not regretful, not angry, just hollow. As they led her away in handcuffs, our eyes met for the last time. Whatever love had existed between us had been burned away, leaving only ashes and silence. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, shouting questions I wasn't interested in becoming anyone's headline. I just wanted to go home. That night, I sat alone in the house that had once been full of warmth and laughter. The walls still echoed with ghosts of birthday parties, late-night arguments, whispered apologies. But now it was quiet, too quiet. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, and walked through every room, as though seeing my life from the outside for the first time. The photographs on the mantel, smiling family vacations, anniversaries, first days of school, felt like relics from a life that no longer belonged to me. Ray called around midnight. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know what that means anymore," I said. "You did what you had to do." "Did I? Or did I just burn the rest of my life to the ground?" He was silent for a moment, then said, "Sometimes burning it down is the only way to start over." When I finally went to bed, sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it was full of dreams, not nightmares, but strange, quiet ones. I dreamed of standing at the edge of a construction site at dawn, watching the sun rise over the skeleton of a half-built house. In the dream, I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken.
I was just waiting for something new to begin. The next morning, I made pancakes for Emma and Jake. They laughed when I burned the first batch, and for the first time in weeks, I laughed too. Maybe this was what survival looked like. Not victory, not revenge, just showing up every day, choosing to rebuild, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough.
Not every story is meant to be sold, and not every scar needs to be displayed. Some wounds are best left as private lessons. Instead of turning my pain into profit, I turned it into purpose, pouring my time into my family, my health, and the people who had stood by me when my world was burning down. I'd learned that revenge isn't a dish best served cold, it's a dish best never served at all. Revenge poisons the person who prepares it. Justice, on the other hand, is clean. Consequences are necessary, and protecting the innocent is the highest duty a person can fulfill. On the 20th anniversary of the day I found that phone hidden inside the kitchen wall, the day that changed everything, Sarah and I hosted a dinner party. We invited everyone who had been part of that chapter of our lives: Ray and his wife Paul Martinez and his family, Detective Morrison, my attorney David Chen, and my sister Rebecca. Grace, now 15, helped set the table, her curiosity simmering just under the surface. As we all sat down, she finally asked, "What are we celebrating?" I looked around the table at the faces of people who had stood with me when I had almost lost everything. "Survival," I said simply. "Justice, and the reminder to pay attention to the people closest to you, their actions, their silences, their choices, and the importance of having good friends," Sarah added with a smile. "And good contractors," Paul said, raising his glass. "And good lawyers," David added with a grin. "And good cops," Detective Morrison finished. We all raised our glasses, a toast to survival, to truth, to justice, to loyalty, and to the random twist of fate that had led Paul to discover that phone. Later, as we cleaned up the kitchen, Grace asked the question I'd been expecting for years. "Dad, do you think Mommy Lydia still thinks about us?" I leaned against the counter and considered my words. "Probably. Do you think she's sorry?" "I think she's sorry she got caught." "That's not the same thing." "No, it's not." She hesitated, then asked quietly, "Would you ever want to see her again?" "No." "Why not?" "Because some bridges once burned need to stay burned. Because some people, once they've shown you who they truly are, don't deserve a second chance to hurt you." Grace frowned. "Even if they've changed, even then, trust, once completely shattered, can't be repaired, only replaced with something else. Maybe tolerance, maybe guarded politeness, but never blind trust again." "That seems sad." "What's sad," I said softly, "is when someone betrays the people who love them most. What I did wasn't sad, it was survival. It was protecting myself, protecting Emma, protecting Jake, and protecting you, even though you hadn't been born yet." She nodded slowly. "I think I understand now." "Do you?" "Yes. You taught me that love isn't enough if it doesn't come with respect and honesty." "That's right," I said. "And you taught me that actions have consequences, even if those consequences take years to catch up." "Especially then," I told her. A year later, on the 21st anniversary of the trial, Lydia died in a car accident in Florida. Her husband, a man I'd never met, contacted Emma and Jake to inform them. He said Lydia had mentioned them often, that she had been trying to make peace with the past. Emma listened quietly, then thanked him for calling. She didn't cry. Jake asked if there would be a funeral. When the man told him there would be a small service, Jake simply said, "I wish her peace," and hung up. I didn't attend, neither did the kids. We didn't need closure. We had already taken it for ourselves years earlier. That night, Grace asked if I was sad. "No," I said. "I'm not sad. I'm grateful that chapter is finally closed, and I hope wherever she is, she found the truth she could never face while she was alive." Sarah squeezed my hand. "So, that's really the end of it?" "Yes," I said. "And now, we live." Jake called to tell me Lydia's husband had reached out, asking if Emma and Jake wanted to attend the funeral. They both declined without hesitation. "Do you want to go?" Sarah asked me gently. I shook my head. "No, she's been dead to me for 21 years. This just makes it official." Sarah studied me for a moment. Any final thoughts about her? I exhaled slowly. She was a woman who had everything: a loving husband, 2 beautiful children, a comfortable life, and she threw it all away for a fantasy that was never real. I hope she realized that before she died. But honestly, it doesn't matter now. Why not? Because the dead don't get to ask for forgiveness, I said quietly, and the living don't owe it to them. That night, we held a small memorial service, not for Lydia, but for the marriage I thought we had, for the illusion of the woman I thought she was, for the life we could have built if she'd made different choices. We said goodbye one last time, and then we moved forward, as we'd been doing for 21 years. 1 year later, 22 years after the trial, Grace graduated from high school as valedictorian, just as Emma had before her. She stood on the stage in her cap and gown, sunlight catching her hair, and delivered a speech that left the audience silent and thoughtful. "My father taught me," she said, her voice strong and steady, "that we can't control what other people do to us, but we can control how we respond. We can choose to be victims, or we can choose to be survivors. We can choose bitterness, or we can choose wisdom. We can let pain define us, or refine us." Her words hit me harder than I expected. My throat tightened. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about survival anymore. It was about legacy. Watching her speak, I realized I had succeeded. My children had learned the lessons I had fought so hard to teach them. They understood the difference between love and manipulation, between loyalty and blind devotion, between forgiveness and foolishness. They were going to be okay. No, they were going to be better than okay. After the ceremony, as we gathered with family and friends, laughter filling the air, I took a quiet moment for myself. 22 years ago, I had been a naive man who trusted blindly, who believed love was enough to keep a marriage safe. That man nearly died at the hands of the woman he vowed to love, honor, and cherish. But from the ashes of that betrayal, I had built something better. I had built a life rooted in truth rather than illusion. Relationships founded on mutual respect rather than one-sided devotion. A family who understood that real love doesn't require you to ignore danger or excuse betrayal. I had learned that the greatest revenge isn't hurting the people who hurt you. It's living a life so good, so strong, so honest, that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. I had learned that justice isn't about punishment. It's about consequences. And sometimes, the greatest consequence is simply being excluded from the good life you tried to destroy. And I had learned that survival alone isn't enough. You have to thrive. You have to build something beautiful out of the wreckage. You have to prove, not just to them but to yourself, that their betrayal made you stronger, not weaker. I looked around at my family, at Sarah, at Emma and Jake, at Grace, at my grandchildren running through the grass, at the friends who had stood by me when everything was on fire. Lydia had tried to end my life. She had failed. And standing there, surrounded by everything I had built since, I realized the most powerful truth of all: I hadn't just survived, I had won.